Hey everybody, this is Nicholas from Linear Tube Audio. I'm here with Lou from Daedalus Audio. And before we get started, hey Lou, before we get started, one of the things that I wanted to do with this series of chats with friends like Lou is to highlight good people doing good things. And we'll get into how Lou is doing that in the hi-fi world. But I've asked each of the people that I'm talking to choose a charity that they want to highlight for people, and I'll include a link in the description below. And Lou has chosen Doctors Without Borders. It's a charity that I have a lot of experience with. Actually, I have old family friends who are doctors that, when they were younger, they were a part of it, and they do really great work. So, in this time, especially, hit the link, donate what you can if you can, and everybody will appreciate that. So. Without further ado, we'll dive right in. So, hey Lou, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing, man?
Fantastic. I like what I'm seeing over there from the view. Where are you?
We live in Bellingham, Washington. This is my wife's house here. So she's a beautiful place on the bay, and it's right on the. Behind me is the bay, and I'm looking right over here, right at the Salmon Creek, just off the deck. And we're kind of fortunate there. But I love Washington. It's beautiful, beautiful state.
Yeah, not too shabby.
Yeah, and the shop is, I decided to, just visit with you from home here today and taking a day off. And the shop is about 20 miles north of here, right up by the border with Canada. And
Excellent.
sometime we'll have to do a little talk up there and a little tour of the shop, maybe. The company started in 1992. So we're getting close to 30 years on this.
Wow, congrats.
Started out in the pro world.
Hmm.
And basically came up with the idea of building speaker systems that were dedicated for acoustic instrument amplification. Bit of an oxymoron there, but it's sort of necessary in the performing world. And I didn't know what I was getting into, and immediately went head to head with the big guys and made a niche for myself. And that just evolved and developed, and to start building, monitors and such. And then those monitors were of a very high quality, to where it was like, this could easily segue into high-end home audio. And so I worked, for several years developing it, and then introduced the first of that in about 2002. And so that was my entry into high-end home audio. But I'd already had an international presence in building these systems.
Let me ask you this. You're the second person I've talked to now that got their start, second speaker manufacturer specifically that I've talked to, that has gotten their start in the pro audio world.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an easier entry? How'd you get into that? And also why, so you mentioned specifically acoustic for amplification, or speakers for acoustic instruments. Why that, and how is that different from, any other instrument?
Acoustic instruments, unlike an electric guitar, where the amplifier and the speaker for an electric guitar is actually creates the sound, is part of the voice of the sound. Okay. With acoustic instruments, you really are trying to capture the instrument. You don't want to change that sound. Okay. And for most of the pro speakers, unless you went into big PA speakers, they were all changing the sound because they were made for, electric guitars. It was altering that sound. So this is not what you needed. So we needed to have something that could do a wider range of frequencies, keep it fairly flat, neutral. The problem with the pro world is it has to be very efficient, you have high power handling, and be incredibly durable. So you can't just adapt it out of home audio. But that's also why it was an easy transition, because you're just faithfully capturing what's coming into it and reproducing that. And so it's an easy transition from that acoustic instrument speaker systems to a home audio system, because you're not trying to color anything, you're just amplifying that.
I hadn't really thought about that, the difference between, amplifying like an electric guitar or a keyboard or something versus, a guitar, an acoustic guitar or a violin. And you've got the added challenge there of people know what an acoustic guitar sounds like.
Right.
They know what a natural, piano sounds like or a violin sounds like. And so, we all have that mental reference, and our brains are highly complex, really good instruments. And we know if it's, we've all heard those keyboards and, you press a button and it says violin, and you press the button, press the key, and it says, it doesn't sound anything like a violin. Your brain just knows it. So that seems like it's an added challenge of the acoustic world.
Well, very much, because it's not unlike a lot of other systems in the pro world, and what people will often even say in the home world about being subjective. It's not really that subjective. A grand piano, bam, we know what it sounds like, and if it's recorded without any effect, it should sound like a grand piano coming through the speakers. It's very hard to do. Very hard to do, but it's not subjective, and when you and this is what I remember the first part. Now you've spoken to another manufacturer who started in the pro world, and it actually is a good transition point, because you have a lot of experience working with real instruments in real situations. I was also a musician all my life, and I performed in my 20s. That's what I did for a living. And I performed. I've played on stage with many instruments, and so you're in close proximity. You're not talking about listening to the speakers or amplified instruments, the actual raw instrument, it. And then to reproduce that. So there's a real connection there between doing that work in the pro world and then bringing that into home audio, building systems for home audio, because it isn't really that subjective. There are some points of speaker design or amplifier design or any of that are definitely subjective, but capturing that basic tone of the instrument is not.
Sure. Yeah. If you're a working musician like you are, you're spending hours and hours and hours hearing those instruments, hearing that, your instrument and the other ones around you, and paying, the thing that I know about the musicians I know, they pay very close attention to tone. Right, they're chasing a tone. Whether it's the type of guitar, size of guitar, the pick that they use, the strings. Just speaking of guitarists, they're chasing tone, and so there's a lot of ear training that goes on, and that's got to help when you're so voicing or designing a speaker system.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, from day one with the home audio, my first priority was always tone. Is the tone right? And the second is the dynamics and the microdynamics, and the transients, getting those, the decay, because that's part of the tone, is how a note decays and the attack of the note. So, things like imaging and such were like afterthoughts. And I found that if you get everything else, the tone, decay, dynamics correct, then the imaging and all that will fall into place.
Well, let's dive into the speakers themselves. So, we've got the inspiration. We've got, you're a musician and a woodworker, because obviously they're beautiful pieces of furniture, really, pieces of art. So you've got multiple different sizes. They all seem, correct me if I'm wrong, but they all use at least similar, if not the same drivers. And so that's obviously adds some consistency to what you do. But tell me a little bit about the different models, where they fit in for people, as far as, sonics or, whatever. And then we can dive a little bit deeper into, a couple of the models.
Okay. Well, first off, yes, there is a commonality with all the different models. And that's because, my approach is from day one with this company was to approach it as a craftsman. Everything we do, I do the best possible. That's not the most business sense way of doing it. The marketing department would, or the accounting department would say, no, 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 no. We have to look at how it's going to sell, what the margins are. It's like it's looking at, I want to build a product that'll perform this way, do the best possible, and now I'll see what we have to do to be able to produce it and sell it. So that means that all the speakers have basically the same drivers, the same level of quality throughout. So the different models, I don't really have an entry level per se. So many lines will have an entry level where it's like, okay, here's this quality level, and then you spend a little more and you get a better quality level, and then a better quality level. And really, we keep the same quality level throughout. Some are bigger, so of course it's a bigger impact, but it's that same quality level is there. One of my design goals was, and the niche that I saw, shall we say, was to have speakers that are aesthetically pleasing, for the general public, shall we say. There are a lot of people that feel that things that look like they came off the Star Trek set are aesthetically pleasing, but it's not the general public, no. And so that would fit into a house like this, say, a big timber frame or something like that, or even a house like yours that will look appropriate, look good, that your spouse who's not into audio will go like, I like those.
Exactly.
So I felt like that was actually an intentional design goal for me. The hardwood initially there are a lot of sonic reasons for using hardwood, very good reasons, but there's also the beauty of the speakers, and they have a really lasting lifetime beauty to them.
We were talking about the whole idea of antiques, right? And what makes something valuable. And you could have a pen, here's a pen, it's a cheap little pen, it was probably worth 95 cents if that. But if Woodrow Wilson used this to sign something way back when, this pen is all of a sudden worth $500 or maybe more. And so story, and there's many things that go into the value of something for someone, not only personal value but monetary value. And I think the things like that's part of the what you get into when you get into high-end audio, I think, and these handmade things that come from someone that hey, I can have your speakers in my home, and it's not just I bought them at some big box store and they arrived on a truck. It's I worked with Lou, and Lou is this great guy. He's got this small business in Washington State. He's doing good things. And he worked with me to choose the wood.
People come to me, it's usually about the sound. Sometimes people will come to me because of the look of the cabinets. But it's usually about the sound first, and then as we start discussing it, we get more and more involved into the actual the wood, the cabinetry, and that. And it's a very different experience because we don't build these beforehand. Every pair is built to order, and so each time I will spend a lot of time on the phone or in person with a customer and discuss what they want, what kind of wood they want, and then we talk about what kind of grain, coloration, figure, and I personally handpick all the pieces so that when you get that speaker, that was not just like, wow, I had this made for me. It was like, no, this was actually picked. The woods were matched. Everything was matched for what you want. It's like having a high-end custom musical instrument made for you. It's the same process that goes through, and believe me, I've had many instruments made. It's the same process, and it's that makes it very different. There aren't that many manufacturers in audio that you have that kind of an experience. But then people that have it, they have, and most of my customers view these as lifetime speakers. It's not something they're going to buy and play around with and sell in 6 months. And they can look at it and say, like, this, there's a connection to the actual owner in there, you know. So I think that it adds a lot of value to it. You know, it takes us anywhere from 2 weeks, usually 3 weeks to a month, just to do the finish on these cabinets. And it's a very involved old world style, you know, hand rub, you know, something 7 coats. There's no plastics, no polyurethanes, no lacquers. You know, this is an old world oil varnish finish, and it just has a depth to it that you can't get. And it's easy to repair. I've had speakers that were, you know, like 10 years old, have been beat up, dropped, kicked, come back, and they end up leaving the shop looking better than when they were brand new. You know, and they do develop more beauty with time. Whereas, you know, a lacquered or, you know, speaker veneer, it's like, you know, you get a ding or a chip in it, and it's like, bam, you know, so it's all downhill with those,
Right.
you know, in terms of longevity. You have to be very careful. These have a real beauty to them that develops more and more with the years.